Matt and I are back today, and we're going to be talking about some master plan communities that sit within Tarrant County in North Texas. We know that we love focusing on Grapevine and Colleyville, but Grapevine and Colleyville are pretty well established. And so we wanted to take it out of those city limits and really get you into some cool communities that are still close, but are just a little bit outside of that. So I think I'm going to kick it off, and we're going to talk about Marshall Ridge. And this is in Keller, Texas. It's a more established master plan community, so not many new construction. They are newer builds, but not as much new construction right now. You are looking at a prime Keller address. A lot of people love Keller for the school district. They also really like it for the nature, and there's bigger walkable streets, very safe for families, things like that. So you're going to be in this neighborhood. You're going to be close to retail and shopping, anything you might need, but you are going to have space to breathe. There's larger lots. The homes are larger. They're 4 to 6 bedrooms, so very good size homes, Texas-sized homes.
Right.
You are looking at anywhere from $600K to about $1 million, with the average being about $700K. And they have great quality finishes, especially because they're not old homes. They are newer builds. They are more modern, things like that. So you're not moving into a 1960s home. You're going to be moving into something that's probably 1990 at least and newer, which is awesome. Let me see. I want to talk about some of the amenities. So there's 3 swimming pools, which is perfect for summer heat here.
It's a good size for those communities. A lot of them only have one
pool. The fact
and
that they
after 5 years, you have thousands of homes for one pool.
You can pick your favorite pool, too,
Yes.
which is always important to me. I always have a favorite. When I go on vacation, Miller and I went to Cabo this past summer, and there was 8 pools at the resort, and I had my favorite. So you can pick your favorite.
They have choices.
They also have a clubhouse. Everything is very resort style and available for you. Great amenities. They also have a gym and fitness center, which you can use or not use, but I do think it's great to have right there. It makes it easy access, and then you don't have to drive to a gym, which is always great. There's lots of walking and biking trails. Again, I think that plays to really Keller, and Keller is known for big trees, established yards, bigger streets. It's just not going to feel quite as city. It's going to feel more truly suburbia, which is awesome. They've got beautiful ponds, landscaping, all that fun stuff that you might want to look at scenically. We all want to live in a beautiful neighborhood. So I think it's great that they have these fun touches for this neighborhood. And lots of playgrounds for the kiddos. So this is great for families, which I would assume if you're looking for a house with 4 to 6 bedrooms, you probably got a family. So I think that's amazing as well. So let's go to schools really quick. I did mention at the front end that a lot of people love Keller for the schools. They are known to be top rated academically. They're also great in sports. They have a lot of extracurricular activities for kids and for families, which is always such a bonus to know, hey, we've got the core down, but also my kids have plenty to do and really explore their passion. That's awesome. Talked about low traffic streets, all that fun stuff. Just saying it again. I know as a kid, I grew up in a small town, not in Texas, and I remember having walkable streets. And it's a core memory for me. I would walk from school to home, to my mom's work, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of spots within Texas where the neighborhoods aren't necessarily set up for that.
Or some of them, the older ones don't even have sidewalks. So to have a neighborhood
You're on the street
that feels like you're actually in a neighborhood is huge.
Agreed. It's a great experience when you've got family and when you're looking for a specific upbringing. Or way of being. Average household income, I don't have numbers in front of me, but it is going to be higher. It's more an affluent area. Again, with those price points for the houses being anywhere from $600 to $1 million. So that gives you a little bit of the demographic there. A lot of people love it for the top tier amenities. We just talked about the clubhouse, the pools, I think they even do some entertainment, things like that with the HOA. And what they have available. Another pro is the schools that we just talked about. I highly recommend if you're interested in Tarrant County in general to start looking at the school districts, but Keller is ranked high. People fight to get into to Keller.
It's true.
Keller was actually going to rezone half a year ago, and they ended up not, and everybody was thrilled because the community was up in arms about a potential rezone because some people were going to get kicked out of Keller. And they were like, no. They knew that would be bad for home appreciation and just honestly their kids' education. Lots of strong resale. So I think that's something that not everybody touches on when you're buying a house because, right, you're not necessarily thinking about that. You're thinking about, I just want this house. I walked in and I'm so excited about this spot. But I always like to think future, for better or for worse. And hey, when you come to me in 5 years or 10 years and life is shifting, are we going to be able to sell this house for what you might hope? Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball.
No, but
we can't determine the larger economic status, but I do think it really helps for resale when you buy in a community that's a hot commodity, which Marshall Ridge is. Inventory is actually typically pretty low there because it is so hot. So I think that's just another plus point that doesn't necessarily have to do with lifestyle and living in the community. But when you're ready to move on, because life happens and we need to do that, you then have a good opportunity. And trust me, I have seen some incredible homes in the not best of places, and they struggle because location is really important to buyers. So I think that's kind of bottom line is that if you are a young family or even established family and you're really wanting healthy education, maybe a little bit slower pace of life when you're at home and you want your kids to be able to run out in the front yard or play in the backyard all day long, that's what I would do. Please go to the backyard. I think this is an excellent community for you, and you're really not going to be missing out on what the Metroplex has for you because it's smack dab in the middle of it. You can get to Fort Worth, you can get to Grapevine, Colleyville, South Lake, which has a different vibe than Fort Worth. Even get to Roanoke. There's tons of eating right off of 377, which runs through Marshall Ridge. And you've got more like local mom and pop or Texas known restaurants there, like Babe's Chicken, things like that everybody wants. So it's a sweet little spot, and I think it's well worth investigating.
I think the next one we want to talk about is Walsh Ranch.
Yep.
And so if you think of, so downtown Fort Worth is in the middle, Keller, where you just described, maybe a little bit more north Fort Worth. So think now west Fort Worth. Now it's going to be a similar price point, probably $650, $700 is maybe the average. I would say really the only difference, I think it's probably a little bit newer, I would say, than the previous community we just discussed. For instance, this one is about 7,200 acres, so it's massive. It's a multi-decade project. They're still building, so I know you said that one is actually relatively low on inventory, whereas this one is actually pretty high on inventory, which we'll actually talk about pros and cons to that in a second. But I know since it's been built, currently they have their own fire station. They've got a preschool. They've got an elementary school right outside of the community, and I literally mean across the street is the junior high. You've got a fitness center. You've got 2 swimming pools. They have multiple parks throughout the community. They have a lake. And their HOA actually includes a ton of things. They'll include fiber optic internet. Some of the builders will include the security system in that. And so you're getting a ton of incentives. So it's really meant to be its own little community. Right in the middle, there is a gas station with its own, think of it just, I don't want to say mini mart, right? But I want to say almost like a little tiny market. So you can get fresh steaks there. You can get sandwiches, basically like some of the basics.
They have sushi at the local market. That always scares me, though.
Yeah.
At the gas station.
They have other things like milk and little things you might need to just pick up. They have. And so they're also adding, I think, additional restaurants. So even over the next 5 to 7 years, you're going to see this little community be its own little city. On top of that, it's in one of the most sought-after school districts, which is Aledo ISD. And they're known for, I think football is what they're really known for in their class, as well as the education as well.
Pretty sure, aren't they like featured on Landman too? That really popular show. Yeah. They're like Midlothian, Aledo. Like, they're on the map now.
They're ranked number 1, I think, in the country. They have been many times. And so it's a highly sought-after neighborhood. Now, one thing I do like that's a little bit different is they do have many townhomes there, which may be a pro or con to some people, but it can help a lot of people who want to live in a community like that but can't afford an $800,000-$900,000 house to buy a townhome for maybe $475,000-$500,000. So we can get them in. Now, we did talk about inventory. So because this is a multi-decade project, it can be difficult if you only plan on living there a few years to sell your property, right? Reason being is I could either buy your house at the same value as a brand new build where I get to pick counters and all other finishes. On top of that, they're usually offering rate incentives. So I'm going to get a lower interest rate, and they're covering all of the closing costs.
It gets to a point where it just logically doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. So I have actually personally worked with several buyers over the last 12 months, and many of whom in Walsh have actually had to just take their house off the market because it sat for 6, 7, 8 months just because there's so many new builds still being built.
You don't want to throw it away.
That, and then by the time they dropped their home to what may be attractive, it just didn't make sense financially anymore. So that's something to consider. If you love it and you see yourself there for 7, 10, 15 years, absolutely, because it's going to appreciate with the community. If you see yourself there for a couple years, it may not be the best fit short term. But overall, an incredible community and very highly sought after in Aledo.
I wanted to touch on what you were saying about townhomes with houses as well. I've seen multiple communities do this now, and I actually really enjoy it. This is me personally, but just speaking to it, because I feel like a lot of the people that you see in houses tend to remain in their house because they have the space, they have the backyard, they have some of those amenities just built in, right? But I see a lot of people in townhomes and condos, especially if they have dogs, whatnot, they're out walking in the community. And I feel like it makes it really lively. I even got my mom into a community where it's a mix of townhomes, houses, and even apartment complexes. And I'm there frequently dropping off my kiddo to her. And it's so much fun to see the variety of people out and about. Kids playing soccer, people going to a dog park, just everywhere. I have to remember to drive slowly.
No, I will say, because we live really close to Walsh, and when we visit friends there, there's always an event going on by the lake. There is a soccer game going on. There are kids riding bicycles. And so, it is very lively. And so it does make it feel like a little bit more of a community rather than just a neighborhood you drive into and pull your car in the garage and then don't leave.
Which I love to have the option of going outside of my neighborhood for entertainment and what I might want to do. But because Fort Worth is so spread out, I think it's really awesome to have all of that at your fingertips.
And then on top of that, right, and we talked about this in a previous video, Walsh is still maybe only 15 minutes from downtown. So again, you're in your own little city almost. And then when you still want to get out, right, 15 minutes from downtown Fort Worth and everything that has to offer.
I did want to mention some of the builders in Walsh, not to take away from what you're saying here, but just so if you're coming into the community, there's a variety and we can look at the quality of build or why they build differently. So there's MK Homes, Village Homes, Drees Custom Homes, Glendorock Homes, High Street Homes, Park Hill Homes, and John Askew Homes. Some of these are custom and not just like track builders. So it's fun to know that you have variety to pick from too in these bigger neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of home builders in there. I'd say maybe a couple that we may have left off that are probably the most prominent in that community. And this is, again, if you're buying probably $800,000 to $1 million. They've got David Weekley Homes. We've got Toll Brothers, Perry Homes, which is also, I think, known as Britton Homes. Highland Homes is another big one. So you'll see a ton of those throughout the community. And those are typically going to be the most popular ones that I've seen. And again, those are going, maybe 800,000 plus.
I need to dive into some of those builders more, but I've frequently worked with David Weekley, and one of the things that I love about David Weekley is they actually stamp their home. They put like a plaque on the outside because they're so proud of their homes.
That's pretty cool.
Which not many builders will do that these days because knock on your door in 10 years and the house might not look the same. So it's cool. I think they're attracting, all that to say, I think they're attracting really quality builders. Now we want to hop to Arlington, and this master planned community is called Viridian. This is a very up and coming community, and it's large. It's 2,000 plus acre master planned community. One of the things when I was taking a deep dive into it, because I drive past it frequently, and I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. But when I was researching, they actually have something called the Audubon Gold Signature Sanctuary. And this means that the community was designed and maintained according to high ecological planning standards. And I think you really see this when you drive the community. There's 5 lakes, there's lots of ponds, and nature is very preserved, even wildlife. which I love because I feel like when you get into a metroplex in general, it can start to feel like a concrete jungle. And so to have a community that planned around, hey, we want people out in nature, we want people walking around and having community, I think that's just beautiful.
And let's be honest, parts of Texas can feel very flat.
Yes.
And so if you get out into the country, right, oftentimes it is just either flat or small rolling hills, right, where you're going to just see a lot of cattle grazing. So to be somewhere where there is a master plan and they have created an environment to where it feels like there's a little bit more nature for you to enjoy is actually quite a big draw, I think, in Texas.
100%. That's what I would want at this point, having lived here. Again, I love nature. My husband jokes with me. I walk outside in the sun and I'm like, oh, he's like, who are you? But there is a variety of housing options in Viridian, just like we were talking in Walsh. It is very large. So you've got many different builders that are building different stages. It has townhomes as well as single-family resident, detached homes. They are still doing new construction, but there's a lot of established. So you're probably looking at the same scenario as Walsh of if you're moving here and you're like, oh, I want to be here a couple years, I would say maybe don't look at Viridian, or we need to look at an older, more established area if you're wanting to resell.
I think that's probably a good rule of thumb for any builders or any master plan community, unless the build is completely done.
Yes, agreed. The prices probably start around $400K. You can get something decent, a 3.2, but it's going to gradually get higher with that kind of the average being $500K, but it can get up into luxury within Viridian as well. I mentioned on the front end, they have 5 lakes. So they have sailing, they have canoes, they have all this different fun stuff that you can get involved in recreationally. I don't know if I mentioned fishing, but I think that's so much fun. I grew up in Minnesota with all the lakes. So I think it's so cool to be able to take your kid out and be like, hey, let's put a worm on a hook and let's go. I won't touch worms at this point, I will say. But as a child, it was a lot of fun. Lots of parks and playgrounds. They also have a dog park. They've really tried to make it pet friendly as well, which is awesome. And they have a resort-style pool at the Viridian Lake Club. I really feel like if you're not a super fan of the heat, having a pool near you in Texas is necessary and wonderful. Who doesn't love a day at the pool? They also have pickleball and tennis courts, volleyball courts, and we know how popular all of that has become.
Yeah.
So that's awesome to have access to. I know personally, because I've played at those tennis courts a couple of times, you can reserve the courts and spots and all this fun stuff. So there's just a lot that you can do. They do wine nights. Hello. That's fun. And then seasonal programming and community events. So again, if you're the type that's like, man, I love to get into a neighborhood where maybe I don't have to think and plan as much, but I can show up and be social and really get to know my neighbors, this is a great spot for you. They also have a town center and a mixed-use area that they are currently working on building up. So some of it's already done, but it's going to continue to expand, just like Walsh. And I think that's so fun. It's becoming its own little city.
And I've noticed that as we get farther out of the metroplex, especially in these non-established areas, right? They're turning these master plan communities into their own little city that doesn't require you to necessarily get out as much as you would need to, right? Because they do have shopping that they're adding in there. They do have food that they're adding. They do have gas stations. They are building schools. And so, again, they're creating almost their own little town within these master plan communities.
Let's talk about school really quick. They do have an elementary on site, so just like Walsh. And then the rest is served by Hearst Euless Bedford School District, which does have great ratings still. Honestly, most of the school districts within Tarrant County have really high ratings. But that's all served, and the schools are very well placed around the community. I think we talked about community vibes and demographics already a little bit. It is a more affluent zip code. Again, with the price point starting at $4, but you're thinking more like 500 plus. It is very sought after at this point. I have many a buyer go, have you heard of Viridian? What do you think of Viridian?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are catching on to what they're building. And obviously being located in Arlington, we haven't really talked about Arlington a whole lot, but a sports hub. You've got Cowboy Stadium right there, Global Live Stadium for baseball. And then you've got Six Flags, you've got Hurricane Harbor. So there's a lot of big entertainment within Arlington. And Arlington is about 20 to 25 minutes from Dallas or Fort Worth. So, I mean, it's
So, I mean, the three communities we talked about, again, if we want to think about, Fort Worth right in the middle, right above, we talked about the first community. Then we had West Fort Worth, and then now we just talked about Viridian, which is kind of southeast Fort Worth. So depending on what's, like you said, where you're moving, where your job is, what's important to you, they are building these type of communities within the entire kind of radius of the outside of Fort Worth. So there are communities really for each area that someone might be moving into.
Yeah. Pros and cons. We've already talked about the pros. I think the only real con that I can think of is, again, if you're coming to buy and you're going to resell quickly, there's a potential that it's going to be a struggle. So I just want you to think that through. But past that, it's truly just a great community. I did want to do a quick mention, and I wouldn't even call this a huge master planned community. I think at the end of the day, the planning kind of evolved over the course of time, but I do want to mention it really quick. It's just different than what we've talked about so far, and that's South Lake Town Square area. So we're talking about South Lake, Texas, very affluent, one of the most affluent zip codes in Tarrant County. They have a town square. So think anything that you could possibly want to eat, high-end shopping, above that, some apartments, and everyday businesses, right? Maybe a title company or a lender is sitting at the top of the buildings, but in a Sprouts grocery store, a Central Market grocery store, things like that. But they have put condominiums right outside of it. You can walk to all of it. Price range is high, it's $1 million plus. But for a young professional that is like, man, I don't want to leave my little community past work, or I want an easy commute to Fort Worth or Dallas or wherever that might be. I think South Lake Town Square is worth looking at for a townhome or condominium type living style. Again, very affluent, but very well worth it. I know I grew up shopping at that South Lake Town Square, and it's phenomenal. The stores that they bring in there and what they source, and everything's pretty well established. You don't see a lot of turnover.
All right, thanks for tuning in. Stick around. Next, we're going to talk about really the best cities in and around Fort Worth for young professionals.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.